All right, hello again. Let's get right to it. There's a gold mine of 49ers info from a 25-minute conversation between local reporters and John Lynch at the NFL owners meetings in Palm Beach. I made a video earlier today discussing what Lynch had said specifically about Jimmy Garoppolo, but he also said a whole lot more. And most of the articles, most of the tweets are directed at the Garoppolo stuff. But to me, I think that the entire roster construction for the 49ers is the fascinating part of play here and the more relevant part of play, because as you know, if you've been following all my videos, all my articles on Athletic, all my tweets, the 49ers aren't facing a deadline to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. They can operate financially as they've been operating with him still on the roster, with the salary cap tricks that they have executed, with the exploding revenues moving forward, which means that it's those other needs on the roster that are actually more pressing, more interesting right now. So if you want to be basic, if you want to get clicks, whatever, talk about the quarterback until you're blue in the face and everybody's sick of it and everybody wants to talk about something new. If you want something more relevant, more innovative, more actually related to the X's and O's on the football field instead of endless, mindless offseason quarterback drama, well, come to this video, subscribe to this channel, because that's what I have for you as we go through the laundry list of items that John Lynch hit today. First of all, in relating to Jimmy Garoppolo, to stretch this out to the rest of the roster, Lynch said, we were able to do everything that we intended to do in free agency. Oh, lo and behold, exactly what we've been saying on the channel here for weeks, especially since free agency started. The 49ers had a fairly restrained plan entering the season, and they're going to have that with or without Jimmy Garoppolo on the books. They've been relatively big spenders in recent seasons. They know the cap is going up, but they also know there's a limit to everything. And they essentially want to keep that restrained, sustainable framework in place moving forward. And they also want to make sure that the DNA of the roster remains relatively constant. This team has made 2 NFC title games in 3 seasons, so there's no reason to try to fudge with the overarching blueprint of what's going on. You try to fill out the weaknesses and move forward with a lot of the philosophies and a lot of the roster strengths that have gotten you to where you've been as a healthy team. And the 49ers, when they've been healthy in 2019, when they're relatively healthy in 2021, have obviously made it very far into the tournament. So the free agency plan this year was to address a primary weakness with big money, and that was Charvarius Ward at the cornerback position. The 49ers really did need that top cornerback, and then to address auxiliary needs through smaller deals. And one big aux need was special teams, which is why you saw Oren Burks, special teams ace for the Green Bay Packers, sign George Odum, former special teams all-pro, sign Ray-Ray McCloud, leader in punt return yardage out of all NFL returners last year. You saw him sign. These were targeted signings to improve the special teams phase of the game. But not only that, they are also, the 49ers, counting on those players to help them offensively and defensively. But in general, the collection of talent that they were able to add so far through free agency, remember, it's not done yet. According to John Lynch, it's everything that they wanted to do. And I think on paper, from afar, if you understand the plan, the bigger picture, outlook at what the 49ers have tried to do, it makes complete sense. Now, there's going to be a lot of knee-jerk reaction online, a lot of Madden playing, a lot of, sign him, sign him, sign him. It's just not how it works, and not how it was going to work for the 49ers this offseason. Certain teams made bigger splashes this year, kind of like how the 49ers made splashes in previous seasons that were more like cannonballs into the water. This wasn't going to be a cannonball type of year for the 49ers, and we said that entering free agency, so people shouldn't be surprised about that leaving it, or at least heading into the future waves of free agency. If there is, real tangible room for criticism of this current 49ers roster right now, even though it still is early in the offseason, it should come along the offensive line. The 49ers right now are worse up front than they were at the end of the 2021 season, and the line, I thought, cost them at the end of that 2021 season. They've been leaky along the interior especially, and they've been leaky for years now, and I think they have to get better at the guard positions. The center position probably going to be all right because Alex Mack, who just got married in Ireland, will likely return. At least John Lynch says that he's working out as if he's going to return. So I think that the 49ers can count on that. And he's obviously a good, solid center who makes players around him better. But at left guard, the 49ers on paper are worse because Laken Tomlinson is now with the Jets. He exceeded the price tag that they were willing to pay at $13 million per year with the Jets. And obviously, right guard needed to get better last year in terms of Daniel Brunskill. So Lynch, to me, it was interesting that he hinted that the 49ers would address the interior O-line issues developmentally. And I guess it's not surprising. That's why I said interesting and not surprising, because who would the 49ers get in free agency at this point? At this point, you're onto the bargain bin guys. I mean, the last higher caliber player that I thought would make a little bit of a splash for the 49ers would have been Billy Turner. But he signed with Denver. That's the former Packers tackle and guard, versatile offensive lineman. I personally thought the 49ers should have grabbed a vet like that, a solid vet like that, to be able to plug and play. And you guys know me. I criticize the 49ers and their lack of depth up front and their shoddy interior O-line play a lot. I've been pounding this table for a while now. And, when the 49ers didn't get Billy Turner, to me, the natural next evolution of what their plans would be to go into bargain bin free agency, which, that could work. They got Laken Tomlinson out of bargain bin free agency in 2017. It was a trade market, obviously, but it was a bargain bin trade for a 5th round pick, and they developed him into a $13 million player. But that's essentially the only option that the 49ers have left now, right? Either a development guy through bargain bin free agency, or the draft, or a developmental project of their own. And along those lines, John Lynch first mentioned Aaron Banks, and we all know that Aaron Banks is the 49ers' 2nd round pick from 2021, who didn't start last year and played only 5 garbage time snaps against the Jaguars. Lynch added a different piece of information, a new piece of information regarding Aaron Banks. He said that his injury that he suffered in the preseason last year actually diverted him from what sounded like it was a path toward starting for the 49ers once that 2021 season, at least, maybe not got underway, but once that 2021 season got going in more earnest. Obviously, that didn't happen. Banks only played those 5 garbage time snaps against Jacksonville. But Lynch seemed to hint that because of that injury, Banks' 2021 season was thrown off. And by extension, we could assume that if Lynch actually believes that, he actually believes that Banks is going to be back in 2022 and ready to take one of these guard spots. And given the 49ers' approach so far at the situation, I'll say this, that better be the case. He better be ready, or else the 49ers are screwed on the interior line, because they didn't go out and get a higher priced veteran, guard, tackle, swing guy, whatever, versatile player. They're putting a lot of eggs into the Aaron Banks basket. And ultimately, it does all come back down to how you draft, right? Because you're not going to be able to get plug and play veterans to fit within the cohesive scheme and framework of offensive line on a year in, year out basis. At the end of the day, if you draft well in the NFL, that's how you build a sustainable winner. So I guess it's no surprise that we're turning around and all eyes are now on Aaron Banks for one of those guard positions, but there is a lot of pressure on him. And the 49ers, through their lack of moves so far this offseason, have put a lot of eggs in that basket. Shanahan then did go on to mention Jalen Moore as a possibility at guard. He mentioned Daniel Brunskill, who the 49ers have tendered in restricted free agency. And he also mentioned Colton McKivitz, who started in place for Trent Williams at left tackle in week 18. But I think the 49ers, in a larger picture, view McKivitz more as a guard. So Banks, Moore, McKivitz, Brunskill, all options at the guard positions. The 49ers need to get better at both of them. They need to get, left guards is a black hole right now. It's a vacuum. So you obviously have to get better there. But right guard, even though you technically should have your starter back from last year in Daniel Brunskill, assuming he signs his tender, you still have to get better at that right guard position. Otherwise, you're not going to win a Super Bowl anytime soon, especially with a first-year starter at quarterback. So that was an interesting part of the discussion, and that's going to be an interesting part of the discussion moving forward. You can bet I'm going to have a lot of dedicated videos on the 49ers quagmire at that offensive line position. It needs to start flowing. Development, picks, some bargain bin signing, something needs to happen, because you have to move the needle there for the 49ers if they do intend to be an improved team in 2022. Next piece of news from John Lynch. Dee Ford is almost certainly done with the 49ers. John Lynch's exact words. I don't see a lot of hope of him being on the field moving forward. We tried to be as patient as possible, but the back had other ideas. It happens. Dee Ford, that explosive get off, you get down in that 3-point stance, all 250 pounds, has to come with reckless abandon at one instant and one explosion off the line of scrimmage. That kind of stuff can lead to back issues. It certainly did for Dee Ford. The 49ers' big mistake in that situation, I think, was giving Dee Ford an $11.6 million injury guarantee when they first traded for him and re-signed him in 2019 from Kansas City. That $11.6 million injury guarantee has turned into an albatross on the 49ers books. They've had to restructure Dee Ford's deal multiple times in order to make it fit. The most recent time being a couple weeks ago before the start of the new league year. That pushed Dee Ford's cap hits further into the future, bought the 49ers time to carry Jimmy Garoppolo on the new league year roster. But now it appears the end is almost certainly here for Dee Ford. The 49ers have a couple options. And the first option is one within their own power, and that's releasing Dee Ford with a post-June 1st designation. That would save the 49ers $1.25 million in post-June 1st money if they release Dee Ford then. Dee Ford retiring after June 1st, sort of like Weston Richburg last year, would also save the 49ers the same amount of money. The problem is that injury guarantee, which you've had to pay, which the 49ers have converted from base salary to signing bonus, and then again to another signing bonus that's been stretched out over the course of several seasons, including void years now. The minute that Dee Ford is gone, it's going to hit the cap. Right now, it's hitting the cap in future years, but the minute that he's gone, he's going to hit the cap in more near-term years. If you wait till June 1st, it won't hit really until, or a big part of it won't hit until the 2023 cap, which is why you either release him with the post-June 1st designation or you let him retire on June 1st, which might be the case. Lynch says that he's still rehabbing, and the 49ers are still trying to figure out exactly what the transaction will be, but the likelihood of Dee Ford ever suiting up again for the 49ers is next to zero. It was also low last offseason, but Ford was a little bit further along, and then he re-aggravated the back injury. Concussion, back, all that was connected. Bad news for the 49ers. You just have to make the most of the situation as it comes by. All right, then John Lynch talked about the 49ers free agent signing, so I'll go through each one of them. The 49ers do indeed, as we said on this channel, so subscribe now. We said this right after the signing. They view Ray-Ray McCloud as a legit offensive weapon. They want depth at that receiving position behind Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. By the way, no designs on trading Deebo Samuel. He's going to be around for a long time. If anything, the DeForest Buckner trade was the exception and not the rule. The 49ers have paid their own players. They actually, under Lynch and Shanahan, have executed 5 record-breaking contracts at their respective positions, which is more than any other NFL team in that stretch. So the 49ers tend to hold on to players rather than to trade them. The DeForest Buckner case was, again, that exception. So I think Deebo Samuel, you don't expect him to be moved. And John Lynch very forcefully said that as well today. So they want to bolster that receiving room. Ray-Ray McCloud obviously led the NFL in punt return yardage last year. That helps the special teams unit, which in the return game is ranked near the bottom of the league for several years running now. But in terms of the offensive unit, absolutely expect Ray-Ray McCloud to be used as a gadget weapon, potentially as a slot weapon, and definitely as alleviation for Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. And not only those two, also for George Kittle. The 49ers view George Odum, who they signed, former Colt, as a potential starting safety. He was forced into safety duty last year for the Colts, starting safety duty due to injuries, and he did a good job, and the 49ers are happy about that. Now, does this mean that George Odum for sure is going to be a starter? No. In fact, I envision one fixture at starter, at least in terms of how the 49ers roster currently stands, and that's Jimmy Ward. The other safety spot, I mean, I think at this point you'd see a rotation there, right? You'd see George Odum. You'd see Talanoa Hufanga. Can the 49ers bring back Jaquiski Tartt on the veteran salary exception? That would mean a salary of between $2 and $3 million for Tartt, yet a cap hit of only about $1.12 million, or whatever the minimum for vested veterans is as far as the cap hit. You can use those exceptions on 4-year qualifying players, or guys that have been with your team for at least 4 straight seasons. 49ers used one for Ronald Blair a few years back, and Tartt might be eligible to fit him on the 22 cap in that regard this season. So let's see, because I think the 49ers still wouldn't mind bolstering their safety depth with the trusted player, but they do envision that George Odum, who actually didn't miss a single tackle in the box last year, is a really sure-handed tackler. They actually think that he's going to get some significant time at that position. The 49ers wanted more size at backup linebacker, hence the signing of Oren Burks. John Lynch even said it straight up. He said, we've been doing a lot of safety conversions at that linebacker position, Marcel Harris being one of them. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, who the 49ers have signed for another year, being a safety conversion from college to that linebacker position. So obviously athleticism is important for the 49ers at that level, but they did feel they needed a little bit more beef there at that second level. And funny enough, Oren Burks also has a DB background. He was a hybrid safety linebacker back in college at Vanderbilt, but he's also been in the league now for several years, 4 seasons with the Packers. And he's more of a true linebacker. He's going to give you that 240 plus pound weight, which is a true linebacker in this day and age. Obviously a special teams ace as well, but the 49ers felt they needed to be fortified muscle-wise at the linebacker position. John Lynch talked about it today, and that was the point on Oren Burks. Lynch also talked about Nickelback plans for the 49ers, and these to me are particularly interesting. The 49ers have lost K'Wan Williams, and on the surface, I think with the personnel the 49ers have now, if the season started in 5 minutes, they would have Charvarius Ward at one cornerback position, Emmanuel Moseley at the other cornerback position, and Ambry Thomas as their first substitute. But what would happen in nickel without K'Wan? Well, in my opinion, on those passing downs, you might see Ambry Thomas move into Moseley's slot on the outside, and Moseley, who has some nickelback experience, kick in and play at that slot cornerback position. I don't think that is the 49ers' ideal scenario, though. I think the ideal scenario involves either Deommodore Lenoir, 2021 fifth-round draft pick, or Darqueze Dennard, former first-round pick, who the team signed last year, late in the season, was one of the pinch heroes, a pinch hitter for the 49ers in Week 18 against the Rams when he played against the slot against Cooper Kupp. And the 49ers just re-signed him just a few days ago. I think between Lenoir and Dennard, whom Lynch mentioned as 2 guys who are going to compete for the nickelback position, the 49ers may have a longer-term answer for, at least in the context of this 2022 season. Because if one of these 2 guys outright wins that nickelback job, I mean straight up grabs it, then the 49ers will be in a position where they don't have to shuffle around with Emmanuel Moseley, inside, outside, Ambry Thomas, all this, all that. You'll have depth that's dedicated to outside cornerback in Ward and Moseley and in Ambry Thomas, and you'll have a starter and depth in either of the 2, Darqueze Dennard or Deommodore Lenoir, set at that nickelback position. So you're going to get younger at nickelback, but you have to also make sure that you stay steady there. And K'Wan Williams, yes, he was a declining player, now on the wrong side of 30. That's why the 49ers didn't re-sign him for the type of money that he got. But it's going to be mighty, mighty interesting to see which of these 2 guys can fill his shoes, and if one of these 2 guys can fill his shoes, because that's going to determine a lot for the 49ers moving downstream. So I think either Moseley kicks in, or as Lynch said today, Deommodore Lenoir and Darqueze Dennard compete, and you hope that one of those guys grabs the nickelback spot. Now, in every single positional discussion here, we have to mention that the 49ers have 9 picks coming up in the 2022 draft. And John Lynch wasn't shy about mentioning those picks today at the owners' meeting. He wasn't shy about mentioning those picks at the NFL Combine last month. And obviously this draft, which will come at a combined 2022 cap cost of only $7.7 million for these 9 players, is going to be a primary way that the 49ers try to do business. So we're going to look at the guard position. We're going to look at, just versatile offensive line positions. We're going to look at that in the context of the draft. We might look at an extra edge rusher in the context of the draft, and we'll certainly look at possibly an extra defensive back in the context of the draft. That's all part of the larger mosaic of this offseason. So I know there's a lot of hand-wringing and complaining about what the 49ers have done or haven't done so far, but we're still, early on in this whole process. And the biggest part of this process for the 49ers this entire offseason has been the draft. Throughout this all, we've been talking about 9 picks, $7.7 million. That's the cost-effective, efficient way of doing business. And it's also a good way of maintaining team cohesiveness, because you bring in young rookies who you can mold into your system. And obviously, the 49ers system has worked well. When they've been healthy, they've gone far, and they've gone far through good locker rooms. So they're going to try to keep a good locker room intact. You can most easily do that through the draft, not through free agency. So you pick your spots in free agency, you really stock up on talent through the draft. And I think that delineation was more clear than ever when John Lynch spoke today. So it was a goldmine of information from John Lynch. at the NFL owners meeting. So I'll go through it one more time here for those of you just subscribing. If you did just subscribe or did just join, make sure you do subscribe, because I see that the numbers are growing as the show increases. Normally, the longer I'm on, the more people are on, which is a good sign. That means not too many of you are tuning out, but please do subscribe if you're new here. And if you've shown up late, well, you could start at the beginning of the video, but to do you a courtesy, in case you're in a hurry, I'll go very quickly through some of the things that John Lynch said. You know what's funny? Here's one more detail. He said the 49ers, I said this earlier, the 49ers can extend Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa while still carrying Jimmy Garoppolo. John Lynch added to that today, and he said that the 49ers can potentially re-sign Bosa and Samuel to lucrative extensions while lowering their cap hits. Wouldn't that be wild? Parag Marathe was able to keep Fred Warner's cap hit the same last year for the 2021 season, which I thought was remarkable, through a roster bonus, an option bonus, a combo of those two, and then a buyback bonus. That was all great stuff. But keeping the cap hits lower, like actually dragging them down for the 2022 season, John Lynch on his own accord said it was possible today. So Parag Marathe knows the cap better than me. I think I know the cap decently well, especially for a reporter. But lowering the cap hits for Deebo and Nick Bosa, whoa. I mean, that would, mind blown emoji. You could put that in the comment section. We'll see if the 49ers are able to do that. But it just strengthens the point of the 49ers have option power with Jimmy Garoppolo for right now. The question shouldn't be whether or not Garoppolo is the starter for 2022. The question should be how the 49ers maneuver in the months before week one. Clickbait talks about week one in March. We're not talking about week one in March. We're talking about business in the offseason. The 49ers can obviously afford it for right now. And how they get these contract extensions done, how they get the draft done, it's fascinating stuff, especially considering the fact that cap hit might actually be lower. All right, so in trying to recap all of this, John Lynch said, for people who think our free agency plans were derailed by carrying Jimmy Garoppolo, this was our plan all along. The 49ers were able to do everything they intended to do in free agency. Every shred of evidence at this point supports that. Lynch hinted that the 49ers would address their interior offensive line issues developmentally, something that I've criticized a lot, I think, over the past couple of years. But here we are with John Lynch talking about Aaron Banks, Jalen Moore, Daniel Brunskill, and Colton McKivitz. I will continue criticizing that until I see improvement from the 49ers interior offensive line. And improvements either going to come through that developmental track, either through their own guys, bargain bin free agency. That's where they got Tomlinson in 2017. They had to develop him, or through the draft. All of those are developmental tracks. None of those are tried and true vet tracks through free agency. The 49ers have obviously decided to forego that path. They're comfortable with this one. Stay tuned. Or tune back in a few months to see if that was the right decision, because, God, I'm skeptical about that. To me, that's the biggest, most alarming weakness of this 49ers team. Dee Ford almost certainly done with the 49ers. $1.25 million can be released with the post-June 1st cut. They are not optimistic about the status of his back. As far as the 49ers newly signed free agents, they view Ray-Ray McCloud as an offensive weapon on top of a returner. They view George Odum as a potential strong safety, although if they could bring Jaquiski Tartt back on a 4-year qualifying player offer that keeps his cap hit down near $1 million, I'm sure the 49ers might be about it, but I think that Tartt might be waiting that market out. And the 49ers wanted more size at the linebacker position, at the backup linebacker position, which is one reason why they went out and got Oren Burks. And then Nickelback, that's something that Lynch addressed, and I think that there is hope that Darqueze, Dennard, and Deommodore Lenoir are able to make some moves at that position. All right, thanks everybody for joining. I just went through the whole laundry list of stuff. I've talked for 24 minutes. That was everything about John Lynch and the rest of the 49ers roster beyond Jimmy Garoppolo and that old trade machination. I think I broke that down really clearly to add some sense to a lot of stupid discussions online a little bit earlier. So subscribe to the channel, check out the prior videos, check this one out if you haven't yet, if you just tuned in, and please do make sure that you follow along as we continue to grind forward. The next milestone is probably like 15K, then we'll be at 20K. And then, I mean, it's really taken off. I've only been doing this for a few months. So happy to share the information with you guys. Happy to discuss this with you. Dedicated Q&A coming up soon. That's where we're going to attack all of your questions. So I will talk to you very shortly. Again, thank you and subscribe. Talk to you all soon.